The contraction hit me at 3:47 a.m., sharp and undeniable, and I remember thinking, this is it. The moment I've been waiting for. But life has a cruel way of giving you what you asked for, just not in the way you imagined. My name is Patricia, and this is the story of how I gave birth to my daughter on the same day my husband tried to destroy me, and how I rose from that delivery room floor with a strength I never knew I had. I need to take you back to the beginning. Back to before the hospital, before the betrayal, before I learned that the man I loved had been living a double life for longer than I could have imagined. I met Raymond Carter at a bookstore in downtown Atlanta. It was one of those independent shops with creaky wooden floors and the smell of old paper hanging in the air like perfume. I was reaching for a novel on the top shelf, some romance I can't even remember now, when a hand appeared beside mine, pulling it down effortlessly. "Let me guess," he said, smiling. "You're a sucker for a happy ending." I laughed. "Isn't everyone?" He was tall, clean-shaven, with a smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. He wore a tailored coat and carried himself like a man who knew exactly where he was going in life. We talked for 2 hours that day, missed my dinner reservation, forgot I was supposed to meet my sister at 7. By the time we exchanged numbers, I felt like I'd known him my whole life. That's how Raymond was. He had this gift, this ability to make you feel like you were the only person in the room, like everything you said mattered, like he saw the real you, not just the surface. We dated for 18 months before he proposed. A sunset picnic at Piedmont Park, complete with champagne and a string quartet he'd hired to play our favorite song. It was perfect. He was perfect. Or so I thought. Our wedding was small but beautiful. 60 guests at a vineyard outside the city. I wore my mother's pearls and a dress I'd found at a vintage shop downtown. Raymond cried when he saw me walking down the aisle, actual tears streaming down his face. And I remember thinking, this is what love looks like. The first 3 years of our marriage were genuinely happy. Raymond worked as a financial consultant, traveling occasionally for work, but always coming home with flowers or small gifts he'd picked up along the way. I was a high school English teacher, content with my students and my steady routine. We bought a house in Decatur with a big backyard, talking about filling it with children and laughter and summer barbecues. We started trying for a baby after our 2nd anniversary. It didn't happen right away. Month after month of disappointment, of negative tests, of tears I tried to hide in the shower. We saw specialists, did tests, spent thousands on treatments that didn't work. And then, finally, on a cold January morning, I saw 2 pink lines. I screamed so loud Raymond came running from the bedroom, convinced something was wrong. When I showed him the test, he picked me up and spun me around the bathroom, both of us laughing and crying at the same time. "We did it," he kept saying. "We actually did it." The pregnancy was hard, morning sickness that lasted all day, swelling in my feet that made walking painful. Gestational diabetes that required careful monitoring and dietary restrictions. But I didn't complain. This baby was a miracle, our miracle, and I was willing to endure anything for her. Raymond was attentive during those early months. He came to every appointment, held my hand during the ultrasounds, painted the nursery himself, a soft lavender color I'd picked from a magazine. He talked to my belly every night before bed, telling our daughter stories about all the things he'd teach her. I had no idea that during those same months he was also preparing for another baby, with another woman. The first clue came around my 7th month. Raymond started working late more frequently. He'd call around 6, saying a meeting had run over, that he'd grab dinner at the office. I didn't think much of it at first. His company was growing, and I knew he was under pressure to perform. But then I noticed other things. His phone, which used to sit face up on the counter, was now always face down or in his pocket. He'd step outside to take calls, claiming the reception was better on the porch. He showered the moment he got home every single night, something he'd never done before. One evening I hugged him when he walked through the door, and I caught a scent that made my stomach turn. Perfume, something floral and sweet, definitely not mine. "Long day?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "Exhausting," he replied, already heading for the stairs. "I need to wash off the stress." I stood in the hallway, my hand on my swollen belly, feeling something cold settle in my chest. "You're imagining things," I told myself. "Pregnancy hormones are making you paranoid." But the feeling wouldn't go away. I started watching more closely. His credit card statements showed dinners at restaurants we'd never been to together, expensive places, the kind you go to on special occasions. His calendar, which I glimpsed one morning when he left his laptop open, showed meetings on evenings he told me he was working. I didn't confront him. I told myself there were explanations. Business dinners with clients, networking events, the normal demands of a successful career. But one night, about 3 weeks before my due date, I couldn't sleep. My back ached. The baby was pressing on my bladder. I got up to use the bathroom and heard Raymond's voice drifting up from the living room. He was on the phone, speaking in a low, intimate tone I hadn't heard in months. I crept halfway down the stairs and listened. "I know, baby, I know it's hard, but it won't be long now. Once her baby is born, I'll have a reason to leave. I'll be there for you, for our baby." My heart stopped. Our baby. I gripped the banister so hard my knuckles turned white. The world tilted, and for a moment I thought I might faint right there on the stairs. "I love you too," Raymond said. "I'll see you tomorrow." He hung up the phone, and I heard him moving toward the stairs. I fled back to the bedroom, my heart pounding, my mind racing. I climbed into bed and pretended to be asleep when he slipped in beside me. He kissed my forehead. "Sweet dreams," he murmured. I lay awake until dawn, tears sliding silently down my cheeks, feeling my world crumble around me. I didn't confront Raymond that night. Looking back, I'm not sure why. Maybe I was in shock. Maybe I was hoping I'd misheard, misunderstood, that there was some innocent explanation for the words that were still echoing in my head. Once her baby is born, I'll have a reason to leave. Our baby. Or maybe, deep down, I knew that if I confronted him now, 3 weeks before my due date, exhausted and vulnerable and alone in the middle of the night, I wouldn't have the strength to survive what came next. So I stayed silent. I watched. I waited. I gathered my strength like a woman preparing for war. The next few weeks were a performance. I smiled when Raymond kissed me goodbye in the morning. I thanked him when he brought home takeout for dinner. I let him rub my swollen feet while we watched television, pretending everything was normal, pretending I didn't see the way he checked his phone when he thought I wasn't looking. But behind the scenes, I was doing my research. I checked his phone one afternoon while he was in the shower. He'd changed his passcode, but I knew him well enough to guess it, our anniversary date, which now felt like a cruel joke. The messages were right there, in a thread with someone named Vanessa. Hundreds of messages, photos, voice notes. A relationship that had been going on for at least 18 months, almost the entire length of my pregnancy. And then I saw the words that made my blood run cold. "Vanessa, I can't wait for our baby to meet his daddy. Only 4 more weeks. Raymond, I'll be there for everything, I promise. You're my future now." I dropped the phone like it had burned me. 4 more weeks. She was due 4 weeks from now. I was due in 3. Raymond had timed it perfectly. He'd planned to be there for my delivery, play the doting husband, and then leave me for his pregnant mistress. 2 babies, 2 women, 1 monstrous deception. I sat on the bathroom floor, my back against the cold tile, and tried to breathe. Part of me wanted to scream. To march downstairs and throw his phone in his face, demand answers, watch him squirm. But another part of me, the part that had survived loss and disappointment and years of trying for this baby, knew that I needed to be smarter. I needed a plan. I called my sister, Denise, the next morning. She was the only person I trusted completely. 5 years older than me, practical to a fault, with a spine made of steel and a heart made of gold. She'd been my rock through every crisis, and I knew she'd be my rock through this one too. "I need to tell you something," I said, my voice shaking. "But you have to promise not to do anything until I say so." "Patricia, you're scaring me. What's wrong?" I told her everything. The phone calls, the messages, Vanessa, the baby. When I finished, there was a long silence. "I'm going to kill him," Denise said quietly. "I'm going to drive over there right now and—" "No." My voice was firmer than I expected. "That's not going to help me. I need to think. I need to figure out what to do." "What's there to figure out? He's been cheating on you for 1.5 years. He got another woman pregnant. He's planning to leave you the moment your baby is born." "I know." The words tasted like ash. "But if I confront him now, what happens? He denies it, or he leaves, and I'm stuck trying to have this baby alone in the middle of emotional chaos. I can't do that to myself. I can't do that to her." I placed my hand on my belly, feeling my daughter kick against my palm. "So what are you going to do?" Denise asked. "I'm going to wait. I'm going to have my baby, and then I'm going to destroy him." The next 3 weeks were torture. Every smile felt like a lie. Every kiss felt like poison. Every time Raymond touched my belly and talked to our daughter, I wanted to scream, "You don't deserve her. You never did." But I kept my mask in place. I consulted with a lawyer secretly during my lunch breaks, telling Raymond I had doctor's appointments. Her name was Angela Morrison, a sharp-tongued woman with a reputation for demolishing cheating husbands in divorce court. Given what you've shown me, Angela said, reviewing the screenshots I'd saved, you have an extremely strong case. Georgia is an equitable distribution state, and evidence of infidelity can significantly impact alimony and asset division. What about custody? He'll likely get some visitation unless you can prove he's unfit. But given his double life, his financial deception, and the timing of all this, I'd say you're in a very good position. I nodded slowly, feeling a grim sense of satisfaction. There's something else, I said. His mistress is pregnant too, due about a week after me. Angela's eyebrows rose. That complicates things for him significantly. 2 children, 2 households, 2 women who will both be entitled to support. She smiled thinly. He's not going to have an easy time of this. Good, I said. I want him to suffer. My water broke at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. I woke up in a puddle, confused for a moment before the realization hit me. It's time. I shook Raymond awake. The baby's coming. He sprang out of bed, suddenly alert, a perfect performance of the excited father. He grabbed the hospital bag we'd packed weeks ago. He helped me into the car. He held my hand as we drove through the dark streets, telling me everything would be fine. I watched him and felt nothing but cold, hard rage. You think you're going to get away with this, I thought. You have no idea what's coming. The hospital was a blur of fluorescent lights and antiseptic smells. They wheeled me into a delivery room, hooked me up to monitors, checked my vitals. The contractions were coming faster now, waves of pain that stole my breath. Raymond stood beside me, holding my hand, playing his role flawlessly. And then, during a brief lull between contractions, he leaned close and whispered, "Patricia, there's something I need to tell you." I looked up at him, and something in his expression made my blood freeze. "What is it?" He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope, white, official-looking, my name typed neatly on the front. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice flat, "but I can't pretend anymore." I stared at the envelope, not understanding. "What is this?" "Divorce papers." He set them on the table beside my bed, next to the cup of ice chips the nurse had brought. "I've been wanting to give them to you for months, but the timing was never right. And now..." He glanced at the monitors, at my swollen belly, at the IV in my arm. "Now seems as good a time as any." I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. A contraction ripped through me, and I cried out from the pain, from the shock, from the sheer impossibility of what was happening. "You're doing this now," I gasped, "while I'm in labor. I figured it would be easier this way. Rip off the bandage, give us both a clean start." I stared at the man I'd married, the man I'd loved, the man I'd spent years building a life with, and I realized I didn't know him at all. "Get out," I whispered. "Patricia, get out." The scream tore from my throat just as another contraction hit. Nurses came running. Raymond backed toward the door, his hands raised, that same calm expression on his face. "I'll be in the waiting room," he said, "for when you're ready to talk." And then he was gone. The next few hours were a blur of agony. Not just physical, though the contractions were relentless, wave after wave of pain that seemed determined to split me in two, but emotional, psychological. The kind of pain that settles deep in your bones and makes you question everything you thought you knew about yourself, about love, about the world. I was alone. The nurses were kind. They held my hand during the worst of it, told me I was doing great, reminded me to breathe. One of them, a gentle woman named Rosa with soft brown eyes, seemed to sense that something was terribly wrong. "Where's your husband?" she asked during a quiet moment between contractions. "Gone," I said flatly. "He's not coming back." She didn't push. She just squeezed my hand and said, "Then we'll be your family tonight." I almost cried, almost, but I couldn't afford to fall apart. Not yet. Not until my daughter was safe in my arms. My sister Denise arrived around 6 a.m. I'd managed to text her between contractions, my fingers trembling on the screen. "Hospital. Raymond left. Please come." She burst through the door like a hurricane, her coat still on, her hair wild, her eyes blazing with fury. "Where is he?" she demanded. "I swear to God, Patricia, I'm going to..." "Later," I gasped. Another contraction was building. "Stay with me, please." Denise's face softened. She dropped her coat on a chair and took her place beside me, gripping my hand with the same fierce protectiveness she'd shown since we were children. "I'm here," she said. "I'm not going anywhere." My daughter was born at 11:47 a.m. 7 pounds, 4 ounces, a full head of dark, curly hair. A cry so loud and indignant that the nurses laughed and said she was going to be a fighter. They placed her on my chest, warm and squirming and perfect, and I felt something shift inside me. The pain didn't disappear, not the physical, not the emotional, but it moved aside, made room for something bigger. Love. Pure, overwhelming, unconditional love for this tiny person who had fought her way into the world on the worst day of my life. "Hi, baby," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "Hi, Maya, I'm your mama." I'd chosen the name months ago. It meant water in some cultures, illusion in others. But to me, it meant something simpler: life, renewal, the ability to flow around obstacles and keep moving forward. Maya looked up at me with unfocused newborn eyes, and I made her a silent promise. "I will protect you. I will fight for you. No matter what happens with your father, you will always know that you are loved." Denise stepped out about an hour after the delivery. She said she needed coffee, needed to stretch her legs, needed to call our parents and let them know everything was okay. I was exhausted but too wired to sleep, so I lay in the hospital bed, cradling Maya against my chest, trying to process everything that had happened. That's when Denise came back. She stood in the doorway, her face pale, her hands clenched at her sides. "Patricia," she said slowly, "I need to tell you something." "What is it?" I went to the waiting room to get coffee from the machine. My heart began to pound, and Denise took a deep breath. "Raymond is out there, but he's not alone." She paused, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before, something close to disbelief. "There's a woman with him, she's pregnant, very pregnant, and they're holding hands." The words hit me like a physical blow. "She's here, she's actually here." "She's in labor too," Denise continued, her voice tight. "I heard them talking to the nurse, she's being admitted. They're putting her in a room down the hall." I stared at my sister, unable to speak. Raymond's mistress. The woman he'd been sleeping with for 18 months. The woman who was carrying his other child. She was here, in the same hospital, on the same day, and he was with her. I don't know how long I sat there in silence. Time seemed to stretch and compress, seconds feeling like hours, hours feeling like seconds. Maya slept peacefully against my chest, unaware that her father was down the hall, preparing to welcome another baby into the world. He planned this, I realized. He knew our due dates were close. He knew there was a chance we'd deliver at the same time. And he didn't care. Or maybe he did care. Maybe this was exactly what he wanted, to have both of his children born on the same day, in the same hospital, so he could waltz between rooms and play the proud papa for everyone. The audacity of it took my breath away. "What do you want to do?" Denise asked quietly. I looked down at Maya, at her tiny fingers curled against my hospital gown, at her perfect little face peaceful in sleep, and something inside me hardened. "I want to see her," I said. "Patricia, I need to see her, Denise. I need to look her in the face." My sister stared at me for a long moment. "Are you sure?" "No," I admitted. "But I'm doing it anyway." I shouldn't have been out of bed. I'd just given birth. My body was exhausted, sore, still bleeding. The nurses would have had a fit if they'd seen me shuffling down the hallway in my hospital gown and non-slip socks. But I couldn't stay in that room. Couldn't lie there, staring at the ceiling, knowing that woman was just a few doors away. Denise walked beside me, her hand on my arm, ready to catch me if I stumbled. We moved slowly, carefully, past the nurse's station, past the supply closet, past the doors with their little cards indicating which patients were inside. And then I saw them. Raymond was standing in the hallway outside a room, his back to me. He was on his phone, speaking in a low voice. And beside him, sitting in a wheelchair, was a woman. She was young, maybe mid-20s, beautiful in a fragile sort of way, with long braids and wide brown eyes that were currently fixed on the door to her room. She was also very, very pregnant. I stopped walking. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Raymond must have sensed something because he turned around, our eyes met. For a moment, nobody moved, nobody spoke. The hallway seemed to freeze, time suspended in that terrible silence. And then the woman in the wheelchair looked up. She saw me. Saw my hospital gown, my pale face, my hand gripping my sister's arm for support. And she smiled. Not a cruel smile. Not a triumphant smile, something worse. A pitying smile, like she felt sorry for me, like I was the one to be pitied. "Patricia," Raymond's voice broke the silence. "What are you doing out of bed?" I couldn't speak. My throat was closed, my chest tight, every word I wanted to say trapped behind a wall of shock and rage. Denise stepped forward. "Is this her?" she demanded, pointing at the woman. "Is this the woman you've been sleeping with while your wife was pregnant?" Raymond's face hardened. "Denise, this isn't the time or place." "Oh, I think it's exactly the time and place." Denise's voice rose. "Your wife just gave birth, your daughter is 2 hours old, and you're out here in the hallway with your pregnant mistress." The woman in the wheelchair, Vanessa, I remembered from the messages, shifted uncomfortably. "Ray," she said quietly, "who is this?" "Nobody," Raymond said quickly. "Just my sister-in-law, she's upset." "Nobody," I finally found my voice. It came out hoarse, broken, but louder than I expected. "I'm your wife, Raymond. I just gave birth to your daughter, and I'm nobody." Vanessa's eyes widened. "Your wife!" She looked at Raymond, then at me, then back at Raymond. You said you were divorced. You said it was finalized months ago." Raymond's jaw tightened. "Vanessa, baby, let me explain. He lied to you too," I said, cutting him off. "He's been lying to both of us for 18 months. Did he tell you he was at my ultrasound appointments? Did he tell you he painted our nursery lavender? Did he tell you he kissed me goodbye every morning and told me he loved me every night?" Vanessa's face went pale. "Ray!" Her voice trembled. "Is this true?" Raymond said nothing. And in that silence, I saw everything I needed to see. He wasn't going to apologize. He wasn't going to explain. He was just going to stand there, caught between two women he'd been deceiving, and wait for someone else to fix the mess he'd made. But I was done fixing things for Raymond Carter. I turned and walked away, not because I was weak, not because I had nothing left to say, but because I realized, standing there in that fluorescent lit hallway, that Raymond Carter wasn't worth another second of my energy. He'd taken enough from me, my trust, my dignity. 18 months of my pregnancy that should have been joyful and instead had been shadowed by his lies. He didn't get to take anything else. Denise hurried after me, her hand finding my elbow. "Patricia, wait, are you okay?" "No," I said honestly, "but I will be." We made it back to my room just as a nurse was coming to check on Maya. She took one look at my face, pale, tear-streaked, exhausted, and immediately helped me back into bed. "You shouldn't be walking around yet," she scolded gently. "You need rest." Rest. The word felt almost laughable. How was I supposed to rest when my entire life had just collapsed? But I lay back against the pillows and let them place Maya in my arms, and something settled in my chest. This is what matters, I told myself. Not him, not her, not any of it, just this, just her. The next few hours passed in a haze. My parents arrived, having driven through the night from Savannah. My mother cried when she saw Maya, and my father stood in the corner looking shell-shocked, unsure whether to celebrate the birth of his granddaughter or hunt down the man who had betrayed his daughter. Denise filled them in on the situation in hushed whispers while I pretended to sleep. I heard fragments, mistress, pregnant, divorce papers in the delivery room, and felt my mother's sharp intake of breath. "Where is he now?" my father demanded. "Down the hall," Denise said grimly. "With her." She went into labor about an hour ago. My mother appeared at my bedside, her hand gentle on my hair. "Sweetheart," she whispered, "I'm so sorry, but we're here now, we're all here." I opened my eyes and looked at her, at my fierce, loving mother who had raised me to be strong, to never settle, to know my worth. "I know, Mama," I said, "and I'm going to be okay, I promise." Raymond tried to see me later that evening. He appeared in the doorway of my room, his face arranged in what I'm sure he thought was a remorseful expression. My father immediately stood up, blocking his path. "I think you should leave," Dad said, his voice low and dangerous. "I just want to talk to my wife, to see my daughter." "Your daughter?" My father stepped closer, and for a moment, I genuinely thought he might hit Raymond. "You lost the right to call her that when you handed divorce papers to her mother while she was in labor." Raymond looked past him to me. "Patricia, please, I know I handled this badly, but—" "Badly?" I laughed, though there was no humor in it. "Raymond, you didn't handle this badly. You deliberately, systematically destroyed our marriage while pretending to be the perfect husband. You got another woman pregnant. You timed everything so you could abandon me the moment our daughter was born. And then you had the audacity to bring your mistress to the same hospital where I was giving birth." "I didn't plan that," he insisted. "She went into labor early. I couldn't just stop." I held up my hand. "I don't want to hear your excuses. I don't want to hear anything from you. The only thing I want is for you to sign those divorce papers you were so eager to give me and get out of my life." Raymond's expression shifted. Something colder crept into his eyes. "Fine," he said, "but we need to talk about custody, about assets, about—" "Talk to my lawyer," I interrupted. "Her name is Angela Morrison. She's expecting your call." That stopped him. I saw the flicker of surprise, quickly masked. "You already have a lawyer." "I've had a lawyer for 3 weeks, Raymond. Did you think I didn't know? Did you think I hadn't heard every phone call, seen every message, figured out exactly what kind of man I married?" He stared at me, and for the first time since I'd known him, he seemed genuinely off balance. "You knew." "I knew everything. I've been preparing for this moment while you thought you were so clever, sneaking around behind my back." I smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. "Surprise!" Raymond's jaw tightened. Without another word, he turned and walked away. My father watched him go, then turned back to me with something like pride in his eyes. "That's my girl," he said. Vanessa's baby was born later that night. A boy, according to the nurse who'd become friendly with my family. 7 pounds, 2 ounces. Mother and baby were both healthy. I shouldn't have felt anything. This woman was a stranger to me, someone who'd knowingly or unknowingly participated in the destruction of my marriage. But when I heard the news, I felt a strange pang of something that might have been sympathy. She was alone now, too. Raymond would never be able to give either of us what we needed. He'd stretched himself between 2 families, 2 women, 2 lives, and now the whole fragile structure was collapsing around him. I wondered if Vanessa understood that yet. I wondered if she was lying in her hospital bed right now, realizing that the man she'd pinned her hopes on was incapable of being what she needed. Part of me wanted to hate her, and maybe in time I would. But right now, all I felt was tired. I was discharged 2 days later. My mother had come to the hospital with a fresh set of clothes and a determination to bundle me and Maya into her car and drive us straight back to her house in Savannah. I appreciated the offer, but I declined. "I need to go home," I said. "To my home, I can't start over if I'm running away." "You're not running away," Mom protested. "You're recovering, you just had a baby, Patricia, you just went through a trauma." "I know," I squeezed her hand. "But I need to face this head on. I need to walk back into that house and start taking my life back. If I don't do it now, I don't know if I ever will." Denise drove me home. She'd taken emergency leave from her job in Charlotte and announced she was staying with me for as long as it takes. "I wasn't asking," she said when I tried to protest. "I'm your sister. This is what sisters do." The house looked exactly the same when we pulled into the driveway. That seemed wrong somehow. Like the physical space should have changed to reflect the earthquake that had ripped through my life. But the lawn was still neatly trimmed, the flower boxes still bright with petunias I'd planted in spring, the welcome mat still proclaiming the Carters in cheerful script. I stood on the porch, Maya sleeping in her car seat, and felt a wave of grief so powerful it nearly knocked me over. This was supposed to be where we built our family, where we raised our daughter, where we grew old together. Now it was just a house. A reminder of everything I'd lost. "You don't have to go in if you're not ready," Denise said softly. "No," I squared my shoulders. "I need to do this." I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. The house was quiet. Raymond's things were still everywhere, his jacket hanging by the door, his coffee mug sitting in the sink, his shoes lined up neatly in the hallway. But he wasn't here. According to the cold, formal text he'd sent that morning, he was giving me space and staying with a friend until we could sort things out. With a friend. I knew exactly which friend he meant. Denise helped me get Maya settled in the nursery. The room was still beautiful, the lavender walls, the white crib, the mobile of stars and moons hanging overhead. Raymond had helped create this space, had put his hands on every surface, and the thought made my stomach turn. But I couldn't let that ruin it. This room was for Maya now, not for him, not for memories of him. "We should get some of his stuff out of here," Denise said, reading my mind. "Want me to box it up?" "Not yet." I stared at the crib, at my daughter sleeping peacefully. "First, I need to figure out what I want." "You want a divorce, that seems pretty clear." "Yes, but I mean beyond that." I turned to face my sister. "What do I want my life to look like? What do I want for Maya? What do I want for myself?" Denise was quiet for a moment. "Those are big questions." "I know. But I've spent so long thinking about what Raymond wanted, what our marriage needed, what would make our family work. I forgot to think about what I wanted. And now," I gestured around the room, at the life that was falling apart around me. "Now I have to figure it out, because there's no one else to do it for me." The divorce proceedings began 2 weeks later. Angela Morrison was every bit as formidable as her reputation suggested. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue, and she went after Raymond with a ferocity that would have been terrifying if it hadn't been directed at him. "He's contesting the asset division," Angela told me during one of our meetings. "He wants to keep the house. The house I'm living in, the house where his daughter lives. He claims he needs it to maintain stability for his children." She paused. "Both of his children." I stared at her. "He's using his affair baby as leverage to take our home. He's using everything he can. That's what men like this do when they realize they're not going to get away with their bad behavior." Angela smiled grimly. "But don't worry, I've handled worse." The discovery process was brutal. It turned out Raymond's financial deception went far deeper than the affair. He'd been siphoning money from our joint accounts for months, hiding assets in offshore accounts, even taking out a second mortgage on the house without my knowledge. "He's in debt," Angela said during our next meeting. Significant debt. He's been living way beyond his means for years, and he was counting on keeping you in the dark until he could figure out a way to solve it. So when he left me, he was also leaving you with a financial mess. One that he was hoping you'd be too heartbroken to notice until it was too late. I sat back in my chair, stunned. I'd known Raymond was a liar, a cheater, but somehow learning about the financial betrayal felt almost worse. He hadn't just broken my heart, he'd tried to break my future. "What do we do?" I asked. "We expose everything," Angela said. "We show the judge exactly who Raymond Carter really is, and we make sure he pays." The court hearing was scheduled for 3 months after Maya's birth. In those 3 months, I barely recognized myself. I stopped crying in the shower. I stopped imagining what Raymond was doing with Vanessa. I stopped replaying every moment of our marriage, searching for clues I should have caught sooner. Instead, I focused on Maya. On watching her grow, her eyes focusing, her first smiles, her tiny hands grasping at my fingers. I focused on healing my body, on taking walks around the neighborhood, on slowly reclaiming my strength. And I focused on my case. Angela and I built a mountain of evidence. Financial records showing Raymond's deception, screenshots of his messages with Vanessa, testimony from friends and colleagues who'd witnessed his double life, a timeline proving he'd been planning to leave me for over a year. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I sat in Maya's nursery, rocking her gently, staring at the moonlight streaming through the window. "I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow," I whispered to her, "but I want you to know that everything I'm doing is for you, so you can grow up knowing that your mama fought for you, that she didn't let anyone walk over her, that she was strong even when she felt like falling apart." Maya blinked up at me, her dark eyes serious. "I love you," I told her, "more than anything in this world." She cooed softly and grabbed my finger, and somehow that was all the reassurance I needed. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected. I'd imagined something grand, something out of a legal drama, high ceilings, dark wood paneling, a stern judge peering down from an imposing bench. But the reality was more mundane. A beige room with fluorescent lights, folding chairs for spectators, and a tired-looking court reporter typing away in the corner. Raymond was already seated at the opposite table when I walked in with Angela. He looked different, thinner somehow, less polished. His suit was rumpled and there were dark circles under his eyes. For a moment, I felt a flicker of something that might have been satisfaction. Good, I thought. He deserves to suffer. His lawyer was a nervous-looking man who kept shuffling papers and glancing at the door like he wanted to escape. Angela had warned me about him. Third-rate attorney, no spine, probably taking Raymond's case because no one else would. I took my seat and tried to steady my breathing. This is it, I told myself. This is where it ends. The judge entered, a middle-aged woman with a no-nonsense expression and reading glasses perched on her nose. She glanced briefly at both tables, reviewed some paperwork, and then looked up. "We're here today for Carter v. Carter," she said. "I've reviewed the preliminary filings." "Let's begin." Angela presented our case with surgical precision. She walked through the evidence methodically, the affair, the hidden finances, the second mortgage, the timing of the divorce papers. She called witnesses who testified to Raymond's lies. She submitted documents that showed, in black and white, exactly how deeply he'd betrayed me. And then she called me to the stand. I'd practiced my testimony 100 times, but when I actually sat in that chair looking out at the courtroom, my mind went blank. "Mrs. Carter," Angela said gently, "can you tell us when you first became aware of your husband's infidelity?" I took a deep breath. "I suspected something was wrong around my 7th month of pregnancy," I began. Little things at first, him working late more often, his phone always face down, the way he'd step outside to take calls. "And when did you have confirmation?" 3 weeks before my due date, I overheard him on the phone with his mistress, he said. My voice wavered, but I pushed through. He said that once my baby was born, he'd have a reason to leave. He told her he loved her, that he'd be there for their baby. "And what did you do with this information?" I didn't confront him. I knew I was too vulnerable, too close to delivering to survive that confrontation. So I waited. I gathered evidence. "And I prepared," Angela nodded. "Mrs. Carter, can you describe what happened on the day your daughter was born?" This was the hard part, the part I'd been dreading. But I looked at Angela, at Denise in the gallery, at my parents sitting behind me with fierce expressions on their faces. And I told my story. I told them about the contractions at 3:47 a.m., about Raymond driving me to the hospital, playing the perfect husband, about the moment between contractions when he pulled out the divorce papers and handed them to me like they were nothing. He told me he figured it would be easier this way, I said, my voice cracking. Rip off the bandage, give us both a clean start while I was in labor with his daughter. I told them about Vanessa appearing at the same hospital, about the confrontation in the hallway, about the pitying smile on her face when she looked at me. She thought I was pathetic, I said. She thought she'd won. But the truth is, we were both victims. Raymond had lied to us both, played us both, used us both. When I stepped down from the stand, I was trembling, but I'd done it. I told my truth. Raymond's defense was weak. His lawyer tried to argue that the infidelity was irrelevant to the financial matters at hand. That Raymond's personal choices shouldn't affect the division of assets, that both parties should simply move on and start fresh. Angela destroyed him. Your Honor, the petitioner is asking this court to ignore a systematic pattern of deception that spanned nearly 2 years, she said. Mr. Carter didn't just have an affair. He deliberately hid assets, incurred secret debts, and planned the timing of his abandonment to maximize the emotional and financial damage to his wife. He served her divorce papers while she was in active labor. He brought his pregnant mistress to the same hospital where his daughter was being born. These are not the actions of a man who deserves an equal division of assets. These are the actions of a man who forfeited any claim to fairness the moment he chose to treat his wife as disposable. The judge's expression was unreadable, but I thought I saw something flicker in her eyes. Disgust, maybe, or recognition. The ruling came down 2 hours later. I was awarded the house. Full custody of Maya, with Raymond receiving limited supervised visitation. He was ordered to pay child support and alimony for the next 10 years. And he was held responsible for the debts he'd secretly accumulated, debts that would now be his alone to pay. As the judge read the decision, I watched Raymond's face. He'd come into this courtroom expecting to walk away with his reputation intact, expecting to continue playing the charming businessman while his 2 families struggled in his wake. Instead, he was leaving with nothing. His lawyer whispered something to him, but Raymond didn't respond. He just sat there staring at the table, looking like a man who'd finally realized the game was over. Angela touched my arm. "We won," she said quietly. "It's done." I nodded, but I didn't feel triumphant. What I felt was something deeper, something quieter, relief, and the first faint stirrings of hope. I walked out of that courtroom into bright afternoon sunlight. Denise was waiting for me on the steps, Maya in her arms. My parents stood beside her, their faces anxious until they saw my expression. "It's over," I said. "We won." My mother burst into tears. My father wrapped his arms around me and held on tight. "I'm so proud of you," he murmured. "So damn proud." Denise handed Maya to me, and I held my daughter close, breathing in her sweet baby scent. "We did it," I whispered to her. "Mommy did it." She gurgled and grabbed at my hair, completely oblivious to the magnitude of what had just happened. And somehow that made me smile. Life was going to keep going. Maya was going to keep growing. The sun was going to keep rising. And I was going to keep fighting for her, for myself, for the life I deserved. I'm writing this from the backyard of my house in Decatur. It's summer, and Maya is toddling across the grass, chasing butterflies with the determination of someone who genuinely believes she can catch them. She's 2 now, with her father's dark curls and my stubborn streak. She calls me Mama and Denise DD and has recently learned the word no, which she uses with alarming frequency. I kept the house, repainted every room, replaced the furniture with pieces I chose myself, turned Raymond's home office into a playroom for Maya, filled with books and toys and art supplies. I went back to teaching last fall. My students don't know the details of my story, but they know something changed. "You're different this year, Mrs. Carter," one of them told me. "You're not scared of anything anymore." I laughed and told her everyone's scared of something, but I understood what she meant. I'm not the same woman I was before. I'm stronger, clearer, more certain of my worth. The divorce took everything from me and gave me everything back. Raymond sees Maya twice a month, supervised visits at a center downtown. He shows up most of the time, though not always. He has another child now too, his son with Vanessa, a boy named Marcus who looks just like him. I've seen pictures. Sometimes I wonder if he's a better father to that child than he was to ours. But mostly I don't think about Raymond at all. He was a chapter of my life, and that chapter is closed. The pages are turning now, and there are new stories waiting to be written. I still remember that night in the hospital. The contraction at 3:47 a.m. The envelope with my name on it. The moment everything I thought I knew came crashing down around me. But I also remember what came after. the strength I found when I thought I had none left, the love that carried me through the darkest hours, the daughter who gave me a reason to keep fighting. My name is Patricia Carter, and this is not the story of how my husband tried to destroy me. This is the story of how I rose. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss another story. Share this with someone who needs to hear that they're stronger than they know. And drop a comment below. Have you ever found strength in your darkest moment? I'd love to hear from you.